Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Sasha Calavoda, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Hi, y'all. This is Sasha here for 2 quick announcements before we get on to our interview for today. First of all, if you are looking for quality supplements, quality tonic herbs, some specialty food items, and you're in and around Calgary, then please go check out Lotus Herbal Health, a great family-run store that has 2 locations in Calgary. You can find them at lotusherbalhealth.ca to find out where their locations are, or you can shop online and they will pretty much deliver anywhere. So quality supplements, tonic herbs, great staff. Check out lotusherbalhealth.ca. Secondly, I want to announce the relaunch of my program called Your Conscious Pregnancy and Parenting Guide, which consists of experts in their fields around the world on consciousness and parenting and education and nutrition and dentistry and homeopathy and more. This is a program I created after my son was born about 10 years ago, a little bit more than that. And I am now very concerned after the events of 2020 for our future generations. And I believe the time is now for conscious parenting and for conscious parents to rise up and to take back our pregnancies and our births and our parenting and the resilience of our children and of future generations. The time is now. We change the course of history by changing the course of our future generations. And we do that by consciously raising them, consciously birthing them, consciously conceiving them, feeding them good food, and taking back the responsibility of raising healthy, well-adjusted, robust people. Resilience. It's time to build resilience. So please go check out sovereigncollective.org/get the guide, and you will be able to check out all of the amazing material in there. It's time for us to understand how our worldviews are formed, how our self-views are formed, and how to impact that and how that impacts the society on a whole. So check it out, sovereigncollective.org/get the guide. And now on to the show. Hey everyone, Sasha here for another interview for the Sovereign Collective podcast. And today I am with Beth Martens, somebody who's been coming up on my radar in many areas. So after listening to a couple more interviews with Beth, I decided to reach out and see if she would honor me with an interview, and she did. So I'm super stoked to have her today because Beth is doing really important work in the world today, and she has an amazing story. So I've heard her on great podcasts like AlphaCast, Dr. Bear Lando and Mike Winner. And if you know me, you know that I've interviewed Bear Lando a couple of times. And she's on some other great shows. And her and Matt Belair, they just finished launching or putting out the Choose Freedom Law Summit. I'm going to have the link for that in here. And I'm going to also post that as well on my Facebook page. So you can learn. This is a super important topic of our time as we are understanding more and more on our broader scale that we are not free. The system is not set up for our benefit. And we are entering into contract with these institutions that we don't even know, that we're not even privy to. So that's a whole other topic. But anyways, so if you want to learn about Beth Martens, go to Beth Martens, and that's MARTENS. Of course, I'll have the link down below, but bethmartens.com, and you can learn about her book. You can get access to her blog, to her podcast. You can get access to Beth herself through one-on-one coaching or applying to be coached one-on-one. She also has a program on there. So there's all sorts of great stuff that you can access that we will get into in the podcast as well. But what really struck me about Beth is she has firsthand knowledge of, how do I say it, living through almost dying, like finding her true self and really getting on her purposeful path through basically meeting death and having a an amazing, amazing adventure from that time. And that is something that I really want to get into and start with Beth, because we are dealing with a lot of sickness in society on so many levels. And we really view this body as a 3D body that needs to be treated through 3D ways. And that is absolutely not how Beth healed at all. And she was sicker than sick. So I am super excited to get into that and then see where this conversation goes, because I think many of us have a lot to learn. Like what I love, I wrote down the name of your book here somewhere quickly. The book is Journey, a Map of Archetypes to Find Lost Purpose in a Sea of Meaninglessness. Like, doesn't that just give you shivers? Like we are in a sea of meaninglessness. Like it's crazy. It's just, that's where we're at. And we can see it everywhere, right? Like what we value, what we're working for, how we're spending our time. And is that really why we're here? I always think about when I drive by a speed trap and there's a cop hiding behind a wall or something. I'm like, wow, is that really what you think you were put here to do? Is to hide and to, give meaningless tickets to somebody that's not even causing harm to anyone. They're going 15 kilometers of the speed limit. And anyway, so I digress. So anyways, Beth, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm really excited to get into this and to learn from you and share your story with others.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a total pleasure. Great to meet you. I can tell we're already sisters.
I think so too. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for people in Canada, Beth is a fellow Canadian in Manitoba. And of course, I'm here in Alberta. So we're just a couple provinces away. So Beth, let's talk about your illness couple like 20 years ago. Like you have such an amazing story. So I know you've said it probably a million times, but for people who have never heard about it, please share.
So it all began for me in, I was leading a double life, split personality, feeling like I was very compelled to do the thing that was inside me to be done. Just following the divine breadcrumbs. What am I actually interested in, passionate about, care about? And I thought in order to do that, I had to go and become, successful financially, for example. That was the gatekeeper. And I had, by the time I was 20, so like, where should I back up to here? Okay, so in university, I studied a lot of alternative, religion, medicine. I did a degree in anthropology. I got the gold medal. I was trained for nothing by the time I got the gold medal. I was disillusioned with academics and realized like, this is useless. And, I saw enough of the internal politics. I knew I didn't want to become a professional academic. And so I started traveling to India. I went on a major epic trip and just satisfied all my desire for freedom by that point, because I'd been a school slave for my whole entire life. And I saw other ways to live. It really opened my perspective. I found a white bearded guru on a mountain to study with. I'd already connected through somebody who's connected to him. And then next thing you know, I ended up going 8 times to study with this guy. And there was a lot of good knowledge to take. It's kind of like everything in life. The lesson goes on and on to, if you want to turn to anybody as a guru, you're likely screwed, because everybody goes sideways somewhere. And whether that's by intention or by accident, it's hard to say. So in his case, there was bad stuff going on. So I was going to India every year. I was working full time. I decided I was going to go full time into my parents' business in marketing and communication, because that's where I'd only ever worked. I'm not good at getting jobs. I need to have a lot more autonomy. My parents really set the bar for self-determination and being able to just see, say how things go. And that was the closest I could get at that point without starting my own business, which I had no basis for doing anyway. And so I went to work with them, and I very quickly became the vice president. My dad was grooming me to take the company over. It was a downturn. It was they lived a lot of very high days, and then the recession of the 90s did this major thing. So I was trying to rescue them, trying to save them, but I was still a newbie thrown in at the deep end. And it was a lot of stress, a lot of intensity. I was a total fish out of water. It's where my whole mermaid thing got born many years later. I was just, in the corporate world, was soulless, people, the meaninglessness you talked about in the title of my book, the, working so hard every single day, hours and hours and hours for nothing, right? For absolutely, I would dream and salivate of the day that we could put up a billboard about something related to, in those days it was yoga, meditation, peace, all of those kind of things, which I actually have a fairly different perspective on now. Not that I don't do yoga to save myself from rigor mortis, and I love peace, but that's not the depths of it.
Mhm.
And so instead of getting out, knowing that I was so out of alignment, I was in misery. I was, I wanted to throw myself off the building I worked in half the time rather than, it was just got to that place. But I felt so uh, loyal to my family. And I also felt very committed that this was my path. I had to go here to go there. And that's a big trick. Like, if you have to go here, then you're not going there. That's the fact.
Mm.
So my health got whittled down. I was actually traveling to India every single year. And the very last time I traveled to India, before I left, I found a great big lump in my neck. I got really sick when I was in India, sort of a flu to end all flus. I never recovered from that. It took me months because I was really terrified of our medical system for good reason. It's a horror show in there.
Yeah.
And by the time I was diagnosed, I had a stage 4 lymphoma, and it was the end. I gave myself that ticket to walk out.
You were how
Yeah.
old when you were diagnosed?
I was diagnosed, I was trying to remember now, it was 28 or 29, I think 28. It was
Okay.
a 3-year battle. I ended up leaving my job, but again, finally gave myself permission to get out of there, and went a lot of different paths. I was trying to avoid the conventional system because I knew too much about it. My family was full of medical professionals, and it was in some ways why the seed was planted that I was going to have cancer in the first place. That was just in my consciousness with everybody talking about it. It was the big C. You never talked about cancer. You talked about the big C because the word itself was too frightening to say.
Mm-hmm.
And fear really does attract what you're afraid of. So it was a lifetime. You'll hear me talk about a lot of different causes, and it was stress, being out of alignment with my own purpose, the toxic environment that I worked in, a lot of different levels, tons of vaccinations before I went to overseas the first time. So it was almost a
Oh,
decade of trying to recover. I was never well after all of those vaccines.
right.
So everything just nickel and dimed me out of my health, especially the happiness factor and the double life factor, right? So all day long, I'd be working in the corporate world, and then all night long, I'd be working on my passions because they wouldn't leave me alone, right? It kept calling and calling and calling, and I couldn't just not do that.
So
So
what were those? What were you doing at night?
it was yoga, meditation. I'm a musician and a songwriter. I have 4 CDs. I was writing songs. I was playing in bands, going out to festivals and
Mm.
doing that whole spiritual thing, which I loved. Inviting teachers, doing workshops, seminars, concerts, you name it. So
Right.
really busy. Yeah, super busy. And then it came to that full stop. And I started to fight for my life. Avoiding the conventional medicine meant going really full time into the natural side of things. Saw practitioners all over the place. I moved out west to BC to see the guy who has more experience than anybody in the country. People would come from all over the world to see him. I worked with him for 2-3 months, and my health was doing this decline. He was keeping me sort of steady, but then all of a sudden I'm doing the nosedive.
Ah,
He said, go home, do chemo, do radiation, whatever they give you. I had a Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was not considered that deadly. 80% of the people can recover from that. But so, he said, go and give that a try. So I went full time into chemotherapy, didn't qualify for any other kind of treatments like surgery and radiation, which are really the only 3 treatments they have. They're not treatments, they're brutalities. And that nearly killed me. I did have a near-death experience the first time after 11 months straight of chemotherapy. The cancer was gone, but I was nearly gone. And so I write about this extensively in my book. The last scene, it still makes me cry to read it. It's some
oh, wow.
kind of strange thing. But the breakthrough there was giving into the enemy, which was death. Right? it made me see how my whole life I had done nothing but run from death. And this, like I said earlier, whatever you're afraid of, it really pulls it in. It's a magnet. It is like a direct cord to the thing that you don't want to happen. And so in that moment, when I felt like my life was being lost, I surrendered to it instead of fighting with it and trying to run from it. I gave into it. I let it have me. And then I had the biggest breakthrough of my whole entire life. When death took me, it wasn't death at all. It was a big fat lie, right? The illusion of death is the thing that we are afraid of. And it could have been my time to go, but it wasn't. And so I gave way to this energy that really actually filled me with a sense of joy and wholeness and completeness. And on the other side, the two sides of the very same coin, the bigness of this journey that was yet to be lived, right? The inner calling that I'd felt, but that was mushrooming, and I didn't even know exactly what I was supposed to be doing, which is the nature of purpose. And I hate to interrupt. Is that bothering you? I've got a fan that's clicking. Is it?
No,
It's
no,
not bothering you.
good.
Perfect.
You're
Okay,
good. Yeah.
excellent. Okay, okay,
Mhm.
excellent. So I saw my purpose. I saw that I didn't get out of it. Death was not going to release me from purpose. And I was just going to have to come back and do it all over again. So then it was a resolution. It was a decision. Like, I'm going to work with this. I'm going to cooperate with this. I'm going to do whatever God tells me to do. And from that breakthrough, my energy returned. I had gone into remission, or went into remission from that. It's hard to say when exactly that happened because the test happened after all of that. But it was, proven to be cancer free. And then for 18 months, I couldn't recover from the treatments. So I was diagnosed again a second time. The second diagnosis they considered to be deadly, that nobody survives that. So they offered me a stem cell transplant, which half the people die doing. So I was between this very rock and a hard place,
Yeah.
right? Not good stats. Even if, I mean, the
No.
stats alone, many people do the stem cell transplant based on the stats. But when I looked into it, I saw it was a total violence, not just to your physicality, but to the soul. And I saw
Mhm.
at that point that I'm not here to protect my body at all cost. Bodies, it's like the flower, it turns to seed, it dies, it withers, goes back to the earth, the plant grows again. Like that's the nature of our physicality. So and then the realization is I'm here to protect the soul, it for the
Mm.
long haul. And that the soul can't die, right? That there can be so much suffering that it vacates. I don't know. I can't explain anything about that. It is just my own inner knowing and experience. So I knew the stem cell transplant at that point when I connected with who I actually am inside, with letting enough of the fear of death, of dying, go, facing it, saying, okay, if this is my time, I will accept it. If not going through this stem cell transplant means I'm going to die, I will say thank you very much for this life I've had, and I will start again on the other side.
Mhm.
I worked with archetypes. I was guided to work. At that point, I had been reading Carolyn Miss's books for months and months and getting a lot out of it. She published The Sacred Contracts about 5 minutes after I had this diagnosis. I went out, I read that book, I consumed it voraciously. I found one archetype that was super out of alignment for me, the rebel archetype. I had been fighting my whole life without a cause, or in a really messy way, not understanding exactly who I am and what my cause is, and railing against the machine. Every time I railed against the machine, it would pull me in. I went to jail as a young adult. I was trying to fight conventional medicine. It was just like I was mired in it. I couldn't get away from it. And so I turned things around at that point, became awake to that part of myself, what that no energy is really about in me. And next thing you know, my energy totally returned. I went from being a dying person to a living person practically overnight. And, I still had some recovery time to build up my strength, but I never had to look back. And I became one of those people that they told me I was going to die. In a few months' time, I was literally working at the same hospital where I had been receiving treatments, this time as a musician playing music for people that were receiving treatments.
Beautiful.
And I ran into my oncologist. I said, like, hey, Dr. Rubinger, it's me. And he's like, yeah, so what? And I'm like, I didn't die. Check it out. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And he walked away. Like, he literally didn't care.
Wow.
And not too long after that, he committed suicide. Right. So you could see the depths of despair that were there inside his profession, not being able to help people, not being accurate, not being able to explain the anomalies, or not even having curiosity about that.
Yeah,
I won't pretend to know too much about him, but definitely not a happy individual.
clearly. And not the curiosity. That's the thing. Over and over, I hear that with people, like a friend who healed her son of his vaccine damage. And, it's like nobody cared. Nobody even, the diagnosis must have been wrong. Right. Not even giving it any credence and not wondering. It just blows my mind. Where's the curiosity as to why? Right? Like, how? Isn't that why you got into the job in the first place, to heal people? Yeah. Wow. So I remember you saying you knew the difference when you knew you still weren't well, but you knew the difference between the sickness from chemo and the sickness from cancer itself. So how long was that? Like, really? When you realized, oh, I'm cancer free? Because it sounds to me like you knew it before it was confirmed through tests.
Yes, I definitely learned to be more tuned in with my body than any test could ever be. And by the end, I'm refusing all tests. And then even then I fired my doctors. I never again went to the doctor. I never again went to the hospital. As soon as you are in their jurisdiction, I'll just speak a law word,
Yes.
then they can throw the book at you. They can scare you. They can bully you. So yeah, I learned the different sensations. There's sickness due to toxicity. There's sickness due to cancer. They're actually the same sickness. The cancer is a toxicity. It's just a more advanced stage of it. I'm always musing about this, like the force of life and the force of death. We almost need a new word, force of decay. Death and decay,
Mm,
not quite the same thing.
right.
And it's part of divine order, again, that natural cycle of life. When things live, they thrive, and they return back to the earth or to nothingness, and the soul is released, or I don't know exactly what happens after that. But so the force of death, the force of decay, it's still working for you, like Berlando's work, very well. It's terrain theory, and that however the terrain is, that's how your cells will morph, literally, into what needs to be done to clean up the mess. Now, sometimes the mess is so big and the cleanup crew gets so large that it takes the system down. It becomes more a force of decay than it is a force of life. And that's, the movement of that energy. I could feel that the force of decay in my body receded, the force of life um, uh, came forward, and I could see, yes, I'm still needing to detox intensely, but it's not that old stored detox where, I had visions as a young adult, my very last acid trip. I never did it again. I did it as a vision quest, not as a party, not as any entertainment, literally going inside. And I was able to see inside myself the pathways that get worn very much on a neural basis, where energy gets stuck, right? You're in a rut. There's some kind of disbelief or some kind of false belief, better way to say that, going on, and it gets worn as highways, and those highways can end up very intersected and very knotted and tied together. And it is the makings of a cancer. It's a collection of energy that is stuck. It's raw. It's like when you see a wire fall from a pole, and it's doing this. It's got nowhere to go. All that electricity is just doing this.
Mhm.
Very live, but very, it could kill somebody if it touches them, for example. And so, yeah, I just learned to distinguish those sensations. And I knew more about me than the doctors could ever know about me. Just as funny aside, when they would take blood every time they would see me. And I finally asked, like, okay, so what does my blood tell you? And how is it reflecting my cancer, and they're like saying, "Oh, well, your cancer doesn't show up in your blood." I'm like, "What? What are you doing with all that blood? Are you drinking it
Yeah.
on the other side, you vampires? And you can't have my blood anymore." Right? It was just a this like, what do they actually do with it? You don't know. So yeah, it's just I learned to take personal responsibility and authority for my health. I'd already done that to a great extent, but I had been programmed. I'd been mind wiped. I was so driven from fear. I was willing to do anything that some authority told me to do by that stage, whether it was a natural authority or that kind of thing. And it was the lesson, and it's the lesson of life, to take it into our own hands and decide and discern and run it through, right? Have it be your intent, not somebody else's intent. You're always going to go sideways with someone else's intent, however good their intent may be.
Or not be, as in
Or not be.
world. I mean, that is that in a nutshell, is I think the world, we like in an instant, we can transform current events if we would all just take that within, right? And run that through our own filters in our own heart and feel and stop thinking and listening and just, yeah. So what do you think about, so there seems to be more sickness, more disease right now. There's a couple questions. So does that mean, because we know about carcinogens in the environment, we know about crappy diets and all these different things, but is it that, or is it that so many of us have just bought into the system, we're just cogs in a wheel and we're not living our purpose and we're ignoring that and we're not listening to the call? Is that what it is? And could we just eradicate it all that way? And what about children and babies? Like, did they come in as a purpose to teach somebody else something, or because they can't make decisions for themselves, right? When they're just born or 1, 2, 3 years old. So what about in those cases?
Yeah, so I'll go back to your first question, that we live in a death cult. It's a death cult, right?
Mhm.
It's taken my whole life to see it, but this is the nature of again, the fear that we live in, the self-hatred programming that we are victim to, that we internalize and take on, the way that the air, the water, and the land are poisoned on a regular basis, that all of our so-called medical treatments are of harm, bring harm. They are blood rituals, they are sacrifices. The cult of abortion, that killing a baby is an option, that killing life to right means to an end, very satanic, that oh, this terrible means to an end, if we have a good outcome on the other side, it's worth it. The inversion of sacrifice, which really means to make sacred, right? This is not to give to God flesh, to burn the flesh, and then we're good with God. No, right? This is absolutely not right. We have, in the spiritual world, we have the whole cult of Gnosticism, that is the death cult, where it's got us, thanks to Michael Dzarian, now I have this word mysteria. It's all, it has us trapped in mysteria, thinking about other people's thoughts. And it's a closed loop inside the mind, which is not the enemy. It's just that the mind isn't meant to work with everything that we've got. And it's got this worldview that we are always under attack by the archons, whoever they are, the government, the deep state, the perpetrators at every level, that we are inside our own body, the enemy of ourself. This is why the pandemic works, because we have outside the mythology of outside pathogens that are going to come in to attack us and take us down, and we need to go to war with pathogens. I was at war with cancer. Well, it's the lie, right? It's just simply my own system has turned into this thing because it needs to clean up that thing. And so this is the programming that needs to be let go, to stop seeing we're not in the death cult. We are in a matrix of a death cult. It has to be perpetuated daily by messages through the media, by messages through the populace, how they, control a certain level. For example, they're very big on controlling businesses here in Manitoba, and then businesses force the populace, right? With
Right.
all of these, stay safe, which really means we're trying to kill you. It's always death in disguise,
Yeah.
Right. So this is a very big breakthrough that I've had over time, but more so in the last year than ever, to just see through that and how it is the antithesis to purpose. The second thing that you talked about, right? When we are running from death, there's no way to be purposeful, because purpose comes from the other side. You could call it love or God, whatever name you want to use for it. Love might be just a little bit sideways. I'm working on this right now, maybe from a new age perspective. But God does not, to me, my experience of God, and this is all I have, I can't go to any literature to prove it. I am a fan of the Bible for a variety of different reasons, but there's a lot of sideways stuff in there, right? There's a lot of death cult in there. There's a lot of sacrifice in there. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I mean, I can sort of get down with that too, because there's righteous anger and righteous destruction. But fearing God, I can't even quote any scripture about that, but you're meant to fear God according to scripture. And it's like, no, my God isn't scary.
Right.
That is the one place I go where it's truly the haven, in the midst of all kinds of bad things that are happening. I am in communion with God. There's no fear. Absolutely no fear. You could call it love, because we're dealing with the unnameable, the indescribable. It's not that what we can think of, but we just have this word love. If we both have the same experience, or if we both have experience of God, we can have a conversation, a very meaningful, beautiful one. But the words never touch that. And that's where purpose comes from, that direct communion with God. God tells you what to do, right? So I always say that I won't slave to the perpetrators and the system and the legalities and the financial world. I will be a slave to purpose.
Mm.
Right? I will be a slave to whatever God tells me to do, no matter how much it doesn't make sense, or I can't see how it's going to work out, or it scares the crap out of me. That's where I will slave. I will work like a demon. I will do cartwheels. I will, do the thing that makes no sense to anybody. Right. When I was doing what I did, even to survive, I would get calls in the middle of the night. People, my sister saying like, "You're gonna die. You have to do that stem cell transplant. You're not gonna make it." And I had already turned the corner. I'd already decided, like, no, that's not my master anymore. You can't serve two masters. I'm gonna go with this one and do my best. And yes, we're all going to die, and you need to be at peace with that. Good night. I need to go to sleep now. And when it comes to children, it is the biggest and the heaviest. They are born in without any capacity. Their choice, I will say, was to be born. I have the sense of that, of the idea, or not the idea, but that being in that position, saying, okay, I'm going in again. There was a decision. I'm going in again. And how it looked from that side was very different, not mired down in the day-to-day details and all of the challenges and trials and tribulations. It was seeing the big picture, seeing that I have this contract to serve in my way. And if I don't serve in my way, then that remains a hole. That contract remains unfilled. So I made that decision. So I think that's where babies start out, having made that powerful, strong, conscious intention to come. Now they are mind wiped, or there's, something happens. Obviously, they have no memory, or they can't express the memory for their whole lifetime, maybe never. They may never wake up to that, right? And we are here as their lawful guardians. As a parent, for example, I'm very aware of the fact that my 14-year-old cannot decide to go and get a poison injection.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even though
despite the government allowing them to do so. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, Manitoba government has said, you're free to do this, even behind your parents' back, and here's how you lie to them gracefully. That's part of our propaganda. Yeah. Unbelievable, right? And this goes against the covenant.
Yeah.
And certainly against every bone in my body, right? And you've got parents, oh well, they can decide. You can see how we've gone sideways. And I've said it on things too. That a child could choose where they live and choose what they do. And it's a fine line, because going against anybody's free will is costly, right? They will get up in arms. They will rally against you. They will resist you. And sometimes just because you are forcing them for no other good reason, they right?
Mhm.
That's the rebel
Yes.
energy again, of just talking about archetypes. And so the parent's path. I don't know if you have children, but the parent's path, it's a
I have one.
razor's edge, man. Yeah, razor's edge. You're always walking that really fine line. And I woke up now to more than ever how I am the guardian. I am responsible. If anything happens because of that child's choices, I'm the one who goes down for it, whether that's financially or criminally or at whatever level, even just spiritually. The most important is spiritually. I have a contract. I brought this child. I was the one who made the conscious intention to bring this child. I am responsible until he is responsible.
Mhm.
We don't even know what age that is. We have age of majority, age of consent. It's funny that the expression age of consent goes around, because that is actually a shit show. That's saying a child of 12 years old could get married, right? That's an ancient Bouvier's law dictionary thing,
Oh, okay. Mm,
right? It's age of majority is more 18.
right.
And look at it, the average 18-year-old, they're still like babies. They don't have a basis for anything. Their face is eaten by a screen, and they don't have critical thinking, right? So I my spiritual age of majority is going to be when you make good decisions, and I see that. That's when I'm letting you go. We talk about it all the time.
Totally. That's
Right?
awesome.
Right. And I'm tighter than ever. So, that they're trying to eat our children, that the death cult needs life to eat. It doesn't survive without consuming the life force of those living men and women, those men and women who are connected to the source, who have real life, original force in their system. So when you're more death than you are life, you need life to eat. And it is this hungry ghost. It keeps eating and eating and eating. It never gets full. It never gets satiated. The more it consumes, the more hungry it gets. So we see that at every turn. They get a little control over us. They need more control over us. They need the next level of control over us. And so children are most close to the life force. And therefore, that's why we get, very scary situations. I won't even go into it, the graphic side of all of this, but it is literally
Pretty
eating the
awful.
soul of, yeah, eating the souls of children, because they are the highest life force that we could have. If you don't do any work as an adult, for example, that light, I think, does diminish as a especially in the death cult, right? You go to sleep to your own life force and you stop valuing it. But yeah, children are our biggest asset. They are the future of humanity, of course. That seems to go without saying. How did they convince everybody that same-sex marriage is okay, and that sex without an idea to procreate, or to create, because I know that's inside there too, that say I'm not going to have any more children. I'm done with that. And yet creating, like I just keep wanting to swear on your podcast. Can I swear on your podcast?
You can say whatever you want. 100%. Oh, yeah,
Okay, I
definitely.
won't censor my video. Create like a motherfucker, right? That often goes through my head. It's create mode. And that is what brings you close to creator, because you get to see yourself. You are the spark of God. You are the child of God. God gave you free will. I always say this, not a little shard of it or a little bit of it. He gave you all of it, the whole thing. And that's why God can't come in and interfere in a way that's without your consent. And that's one of my all-time prayers is like, God, you have permission to intervene and at any turn. But without my permission, that can't happen.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. And don't pray for strength, because God's going to just show you already have that by throwing horrendously difficult situations your way, where you're going to need
Absolutely.
where you're going to need that strength. I was praying for faith at the beginning of pandemic, the pandemic, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to need a lot of faith to get through this. I was praying for impeccable faith. Well, I had one test of faith after another. just back to back to back. And finally I woke up and was like, right, we're praying for that which we already have. So you're saying to God, I lack this. And God's going, oh, I'll prove to you that you don't lack that.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And I was just listening to an interview with Renette Senham on AlphaCast, and she was talking about her trip across, where was it, across Alaska or the North Pole? I can't remember, but it was insane. And she just, all these things kept on coming up, and she met it and she went through it and she never quit. But she said in the beginning, if you told me I'd have to do this and pull these dogs and have these wolves following me that I didn't know and build a canoe and, blah, 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 all this stuff, she's like, there's no way I could do it. But as it came to her, she did it and she never backed down. And you don't know what you're made of. So I guess be careful what you wish for or ask for, right? Because then you'll be shown that, oh yeah, you think you don't have any strength. Well, let's show you how strong you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
crazy. Amazing. Yeah. And for me, I created a course on conscious. When I had my son is 12. And when I had him, I created a program on conscious pregnancy and parenting where I interviewed all these people around the world, and not around the world, North America mostly, experts, including Bruce Lipton and David Wolf back then and some other people. And then I relaunched it at the end of last year because I'm like, our kids are in trouble. So that for me is my big passion right now, putting that out there. It's like, it's inexcusable what we're doing with the children, what the abuse, forcing them to go to school with these masks on and offering them up for experimentation. It's like, what are you doing? It's just inexcusable. And my heart bleeds. So that's a really big area of my focus right now, because we don't have anything with our kids. So let's not even think about the next generation. Let's think of it from a more, I say, from an Indigenous perspective, where we're looking at 7 generations before us, 7 generations ahead of us, right? Our decisions are so in the now, which is good for certain things, but not when it's going to impact the rest of life. It's just, yeah, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, it totally is.
So, okay. So now you do a lot of work with artists. So where are you now? Where has this all brought you? I know you're doing coaching, you do business coaching, but you work with archetypes, right? That's one of the big things that you do. So can you unpack? So I know the work of Carolyn Miss, but I don't know. I never loved her. So I never got into her work, but explain to us archetypes. What is an archetype? Do we have our set archetypes? Are we creating them? Are we getting rid of them? Are we going through them? What are archetypes exactly?
Yeah, I'm constantly studying this to get deeper into it. I do all my study internally. I don't go out reading that much. I'll read after I find and see, are there any parallels at all? Are we? And truth is truth. So when you find it, it should match up with something or other out there. But I think there's a lot of sideways stuff, based in the work of Carl Jung, for example. He was the one to bring archetypes forward into pop culture, which is, it's still relatively unknown. People are still asking me what is an archetype, even though we hear the word, we think we know what it means. And I wouldn't even agree with him today if we had a conversation, Carl Jung and I. I am not. Carolyn Mice, I always shout out to her because it was her work that was an impetus for me to save my life with archetypes.
Yeah.
But her and I don't match on everything, and she's totally not awake post pandemic.
So many of them. God,
exactly. Yeah. So there's still, there's value in everything. Again, an ongoing lesson to take what works and to continue to discern for yourself. So that's what I've done with her. And I, very arrogantly, I'll say I've taken her work to a new level.
Oh, nice.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because she's still stuck in her head. It didn't really process all of the emotional side that work points to. So where I'm at with what is an archetype, that because the death cult is all chaos, the true culture of life, the culture, meaning the growing organic living force, is all ordered. It's not chaos at all. It might look wild. You go into the forest and it's like, oh my God, there's some million elements happening at the same time here. But if you look very closely, you see, only 5 elements. All of this is only 5 elements. It can all be boiled down. Same with the inner workings of life. It seems like chaos because we're always on getting attacked with stuff. So it is a chaotic situation. But when you study inside, you see, actually highly ordered. For example, the work of Lester Levinson and David Hawkins pointed me towards the scale of emotion. Lester called it the scale of action. I call it the scale of emotion because that just is like that word makes no sense to me. I don't like to make you say things that make no sense. And so, like when you look inside, it's not just a wall of emotion. There is actually a spiral of emotion. It is moving either up or down, and it has a logical sequence. Not only does it make sense, it works in nature, like terrain theory versus germ theory. Germ theory, you have to memorize. Terrain theory, you can observe everywhere, out there, in here. And so, the scale of action, a scale of emotion, it's very simple. The lowest energy being apathy. One level up is grief. That's why people are stuck in apathy, because they don't like grief. One level up is fear. They'll get stuck in grief because they don't like feeling fear. One level up is lust. They like lust because they didn't like fear.
Okay.
Right? We got a lust culture. It's all about like your passion and your desire and blah, 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 which is, it's part of the door, but it's not the whole way through the door. And then one up from lust is anger, and people love their anger because you can get shit done from that place. But you're not there yet, and it gets stuck there. That's actually a big rebel shadow, is getting stuck in anger. One step up is.
Can I just interrupt? I think that's where I'm kind of stuck right now, and I'm working to get this as soon as day one from the when this hit, I was mad,
Exactly.
super mad, because I'm like day one, I'm like, this is bullshit, and so I have to work to get out of that, but and then you see what's going on. It's hard to get sucked back in again, right? That anger is a place of, it is a motivating thing, but it's like you can't stay in it.
It'll eat you alive. That really was one of the big roots of my cancer. It was a lot of anger.
Okay.
It was just that's not to scare you. No, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
no, noted. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. No, it was diagnosed by several energy workers in the same way. So that was very interesting. And then the next level up. So this is the trap for the truth community. We don't tend to vibe in apathy and grief and fear. That we have more courage. We're willing to look at hard things. We're willing to get mad. At like to see the thing and get mad rather than go into denial and shrink away. And so the next level is a big trap called pride, where you feel right, and it's not true righteousness. It's that like I'm right, and it's separateness. You're over there, I'm over here. You have nothing. I'm not stupid like you are. The masked thing, and you just saw that, like, so much hatred from the truth community going to normal people. And that didn't help them. I know, I tried it. Right? Didn't help them at all. So the next level up from there is courage. And that's where you can take action in a different way, but you haven't arrived yet. There's no arrival in courage. It helps. Curiosity is good, much better than anger and pride, where you're superior or inferior or judging or jealous or all that kind of stuff. The next level is acceptance, where you say, okay, it's kind of isness. I have a girlfriend who keeps using this word isness, and just saying like, okay, yeah, this shitty situation is. I'm going to stop hating it, resisting it, trying to be separate from it. I'm going to let it be what it is, not condoning it, not anything, but coming into this place of acceptance. It's truly the only place you can begin to heal from. No healing can come I had to accept death. Thank you, death, for coming. Thank you for serving me. I'm gonna sit with you at my table like an honored guest, and we're gonna talk, and I'm gonna stop hating you. But that's not the destination. It's a good place to be. Then there's peace, right? Peace is where you actually, and I don't know if you're experiencing this, but it's a spiral, and you can put yourself through it. I just hit peace myself, right? It's beautiful. There's a very large experience with many, many facets, kind of like diamonds, facets of a diamond. The joy and the sense of love and the sense of freedom and the sense, although freedom can transcend, but you're not home yet. In peace, you're not home because it's a spiral, and your next destination on the spiral is apathy. It's a next. Right? It's a next level of apathy, because we live in this ordered universe. It doesn't stop. It's infinite. It's always growing. It's always dying. It's always circling. Although spiraling is a better term, because it's not a closed loop. That's more the death cult, the Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail.
Right.
That's closed. There's right. The spiral is more God's design. And when you turn the spiral on the side, it's a sine wave, right? It appears to be going up and down. And so major traps on the road to what could be freedom or God, if you want to, however you want to call it. But all of this represents the order that God has installed. It's at every level of life, this is happening. If you tap into it, then you start to see, I am not at the mercy of the next bout of depression, although it's very humbling, because when depression comes, it didn't come, but when you're in it, it's like, woof, like somebody laid a wet blanket on you, and like, like you're not generating it. But that is the painful truth at the heart of everything. We are generating everything. By our free will, we are consenting to everything. And I think that also includes children at a very sublime level. By coming to earth, by coming to certain circumstances, there is a choice there. Never blames anybody, but what it does is give you the responsibility. So if you take the task to create, to assume responsibility for what you do here on earth, then you are in a very different place. You're not victim to all of that. Archetypes are a major this is your question. Sorry to answer in
That's
such a
okay.
long
No,
way.
it's good. Mhm.
So archetypes are a major part of this order of the universe. I see them as a blueprint that God created. A blueprint is nothing. It's just a piece of paper. It's not the house that you're going to live in. It needs life to come through it, to shine through it. Also a lens I like to see. Without the light of God, the lens, you won't see anything. It's inert. But it's there for us as, and I use different metaphors, like a map, right? It's something to follow. So when you learn the order of archetypes, when you learn the script of archetypes, when you learn the natural expression of archetypes, then you can start to follow the thread of it. The thread, not threat. And so the archetype will always have one of two expressions, and it comes down to free will. Either you're using that on purpose knowingly, you're choosing, or you are using it unconsciously, you're still choosing, but you won't have that experience and the empowerment of choosing. So the archetype can either express consciously or it will express unconsciously. And the two are like night and day. They look like they have nothing to do with each other. But when you study on the energetic level inside, you see the energy is identical. There is no difference between the conscious and the unconscious. And so by getting behind the wheel like that, you become the driver and you say like, oh, Beth, rebel without a cause. It's killing you. It's sucking the life out of you. It's cooperating with the death cult. Do you want to keep on cooperating with the death cult, or would you rather be free? And then you say, okay, I can turn this around. I'm going to stop being that rebel without a cause. I'm going to dig deep inside myself. I'm going to go through the pain of the shadow, because that's the first stage of awakening, is pain, right? You notice that if one of your limbs goes to sleep, the first thing that you start to feel after circulation comes back is pain. Those
Mhm.
awful tingles, right? But
Mhm.
that's the gatekeeper. If you're not willing to go through the pain and harvest the energy, because the pain is showing you where the energy is stuck, right? And you
Yes.
can go harvest that. You have to go through it. And that's where the whole now next level. So archetypes representing this layer, and then even deeper underneath that is the level of programming. And then you have core programs. This was also the work of Lester Levinson, discovering that, there's really a human being only, human, I know that's a problematic legal word. And we'll talk about, I hope we talk a little bit about law as well. The living being is really only operating from these primary programs, could be as little as 4. So beautiful, so eloquent, that really you're only ever looking for 4 programs. And with simple questions to see, are you afraid not to survive? That's really the biggest kicker core program. Are you afraid not to have love and approval? It's connected to survival. When you don't get the love and approval of the people around you, they might push you out and you won't survive. right? That would have been the day in a more traditional society. You couldn't live in the forest alone. You
Right.
needed the cooperation, right?
Mm.
And one of the programs is about separation, that how when you tell a kid to go and sit in the corner, God bless any parent who's done that. We've all made our errors, but you're actually, you're killing that child by making them separate. That is one of the core programs. It'll make them want oneness. It's a lie. We already have that. Right. So as you tell, you unconsciously say, I want that love. I want that survival. I want that oneness. Then you're doomed to have all the experiences that reflect not having all of that, so that you can deprogram and make a new decision and work with nature instead, rather than the denature. The fourth program being this one, highly hijacked by the new age world, and it's about control, the fear of being out of control, the desire for control. Those are all the same program. And then New Age comes along and says, oh, let go of control. And there couldn't be more bullshit in there, right?
Uh-huh. Okay.
You can't let that go. You are in control. You have free will, all of it.
Mm.
Right. So that by letting go of control, you are pretending that some other force outside of yourself is in control. It's messy because there is such thing as surrender to God, surrendering to God's will, merging with God's will. All of these words get a little, crazy because we can't describe the indescribable, but there is a big difference in the experience. That's why you have to come the same way I did with medicine and diagnoses and tests. I had to turn to myself as the authority, right? That's another big archetype, the victim, that we're trying to give away. By the way, the free will of choice, that's the saboteur. When you don't exercise free will of choice, you sabotage free will of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, the between the victim, the saboteur, the child, very, very big primal archetype is what I call it. Prostitute also is all about faith, right? When you don't have faith, you sell your soul to the devil. And then the fifth primal archetype, which I've done a course on all of this, specifically for the truth community, is the masculine feminine. That's been highly weaponized against us, right? The
Man.
division between those two,
Mm-hmm.
and making us all part and at war inside ourselves, right? Like that's where my podcast, The King Hero's Journey, has been born. I was at war with the masculine my whole life. I bought into the whole feminist, agenda, and making me hate men and effectively hating myself, because we are all masculine, feminine in here.
Right.
And having a breakthrough after my dad died, and just seeing like, oh my God, it's not men that are the perpetrators. There are, it's psychopaths that are the perpetrators. And they come in all shapes and forms and sizes. And there's only two genders, by the way. I hate to be so blatant about this. And like, it is a law. It is a
I thought there were
natural
like
law.
63 or something. I don't know.
Exactly. No. And it's
Right.
a law of nature. This is God's law,
Right.
right? Law of
Right.
gender. So
Yeah.
you can't mess with that, but they've gone out of their way. The death cult has tried to fracture the crap out of that, because there's a lot of power there, right? The darker and the more scary the shadow is, that's how much power is available. So those five primal archetypes to me are, I use the symbol of a geyser. That's how much energy you can let up when you come out of the shadow. And but it's a woven path. It's a seriously complex path until you take it in. Then it's not so overwhelming anymore. Having said that, it's still overwhelming. And this is why I teach archetypes, because nobody has 3 years to go and lay down and look inside. Because
Right.
that's all I did while I was recovering from cancer, was study the inner life and what are the workings here. So that's why working with archetypes is priceless, because you can simplify the situation, right? When I was dying, I'm like, all I knew was a wall of death. And then I found one archetype that so clearly was out of alignment for me, and I just tweaked it.
Right.
I didn't conquer the whole world. I didn't uncover every archetype inside myself, and there are a multitude of them. They're not a living being. They're just in potential. They point
So
to purpose.
But
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, when you tweaked it, does that mean you just had a realization about it? Did you,
Yep.
or it was just your decision? Okay, I'm not going to be going, I'm not going to be playing out that archetype that way anymore. Like just that
Yeah.
realization. That's all you needed to do.
You said it. It's the awakening, the awareness. When you see the shadow that you didn't see, we all know what that feels like. When you see something about yourself that everybody else sees it, but you don't see it.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
God's game. And so yeah, those are major steps. It's not all the way. It's about half the way. Now that was enough to bring energy back into my system, and that's the whole game, is to reclaim enough life energy, because life energy works for us. That's God energy. It's
Mm.
always working for us, never against us. And so if you bring more life force into your body, all of a sudden, my body could heal from cancer. I don't know how to heal from cancer, but free life God energy does.
So that archetype was sucking the life from you in the way it was playing out. Is that what you mean? And you couldn't heal because of that? Like it was, and then you
Yeah, I
freed up
was
this healing energy?
right. I was divesting myself into that shadow. I was right. So there was nothing other than me, other than the unconscious choice to stay asleep and rail against the machine, and continue to fight external enemies when I really needed to see the enemy within.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
I was divesting rather than investing. That is very costly. Death is extremely costly, like we were talking about. It needs constant feeding, whereas life is its own source of
Mhm.
energy. It doesn't cost energy. It gives energy. It gives
Right.
life. So
Right.
seeing is half. Now the other half to me is the deprogramming, going and seeing at the fine level, how are these things rooted? And why do they keep coming up over and over again? You let anger go yesterday, but here it is again when the clerk at the store says something stupid or makes you,
Yeah.
forces you or keeps you out because of a mask. And so these experiences are rooted. And Lester Levinson had a explanation for that. I won't go into too much, but that we needed automation over certain things. Like if I had to think about my heart beating while we had this conversation, that's all I would talk about. Oh, beat your heart, Beth. Oh, beat your heart. Right? Certain things had to go into automation, metabolizing food, firing brain synapses. That if we had to handle all of that stuff all the time, that's all we would do. Maybe that's an animal's existence. We don't know what's exactly going on for an animal. I study my cats all the time. Like, what's happening? You make no sense at all. And so we put certain things on automation, and maybe we put automation on automation and kept going. And so there's these AIs inside of us. Now I'm still, to this moment, I'm always researching this stuff, looking at it. So the AI, the death program, this the fear of not being in control, fear of not having love, fear of death itself, fear of separation. Now, are they also archetypes that have a light and a shadow? This is my new next question. It didn't matter that I didn't answer this question, because it works at the level of to see the shadow and make a new decision. You said the big word. It is, because decision is the free will of choice. You enter into your power. You say, okay, that shadow, that AI, it's operating with my tacit consent, with my life force. I'm going to revoke that consent and say, no, I'm going to pull my life force out of that AI, give it permission to leave, let it go. God knows what the reality of it is, but it responds to instructions, because that's what God says. Oh, you're giving me instructions. Okay. It's almost a reversal. Like, your wish is my command. Be careful what you wish for. Be
Right.
fully awake, right? So you talk to that AI, it's giving you instructions. It's just you giving you instructions, saying, you're going to die. You're out of control. Nobody loves you. Right? Like, and we're like, oh, okay. Just, okay. You're right. We're just busy in the habit of taking instructions. And then you flip it around and you're the one giving instructions, like, oh, poor thing. Uh, you know, are you suffering? Oh, well, come here. I'll give you a big hug. Don't worry. I've got this. I,
Mm.
I'm in control here. I am the source of love. You can't cut me up in pieces. Doesn't matter how much trauma there was. I never stop being the wholeness of myself. you're free to go. I don't need to travel that path anyway. Like I can talk about it a million different ways that don't describe it, but they all work because we are in this kind of magical world of God. So it is a creative process in some respects, but I like what works. That's the scientific basis. So that's, by identifying the program, seeing it for what it is, making a new choice, then that is the path to clarity. Then all of a sudden the blanket over your head is not there anymore. What you saw, how your life is playing out, inside or out, it transforms before your eyes. That's how I go from dying to living overnight.
Right.
Right. And so it is the biggest work you could ever do. It's the most challenging and most humbling work. The higher that you get in it, and I'll just say like higher because it's frequency, right? How Berlando talks about waveforms, they happen. And so the higher the energy gets, the more difficult the work is. It's more invisible. It's more hidden. You don't necessarily have big problems in your life anymore. And so, it leveled the playing field. That's one thing I know about God is that the playing field is level. It's the toddler's problem is the same as the 14-year-old's problem is the same as, you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
yeah. So
Do we have all archetypes within us, and are we playing them all out, or do we all have our own primary archetypes, and do those change over time? And is there a set number of them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So everybody's got really different answers for that. And it gave me my own license to, again, just work from within and what I feel. I do, I have heard it said, I think this was from Carolyn Mice, that there are an infinite number of archetypes. They can be created, so she points towards a tech geek. But frankly, a tech geek, I was thinking about this, that would have existed in say more of an engineer, so like the makings of the brain that is the tech geek now still existed before tech did. And we might have a lot of tech in our past that we're not privy to knowing about. Also, you probably looked into that stuff. So can they be created? It's God's order. Are we really creating it? I might even right on this show right now go back and say no. I don't know. Yeah, it's
you heard it here, folks.
the jury's still out a little bit on that, but so it is intensely complex. I think we are all of it, the whole thing, and it's because of the state of oneness, the state of wholeness of everything going on. But yes, to the question about primary. So we do have those ones that are our, close, we're intimate with them. It could be also phrased, they are more important to us for whatever reason. We chose them. They're like family archetypes. Primary archetypes is a way to say it, like personal family archetypes. And you see how each person is so different in that respect. That why did one person in say two twins are born under the same family at the same time? They had all the same experiences, or many of the same experiences, and yet they can be very different personalities and go in very different directions in life regardless. So to me, this is about the archetypes that were chosen or given, whatever that is. And so, yeah, when you see what's most important to you and you drill down, even at the level of values, what do I value? The archetypes are going to point towards that, right? And it will make you aware at a very precise level of what you were only aware of at a vague level. So precision is golden, because then you go right there and you know exactly where the work is. And it's just between you and that work. It's no more, right? It's not just this big subject, this, new age spirituality or any level of spirituality. It's just like, oh, here's me and my shit. And now I have to decide, do I want to go into the future with that? Or do I actually want to have a new experience now? So it's very direct. Sometimes the new agey people don't want anything to do with it because it's got no off ramps. You either want freedom or you don't.
Right.
And, yeah.
Interesting. So I
Mhm.
know we're running out of time and you have another thing, but I want to talk and we want to talk about what you have to offer people. But before we do that,
Sure.
I just, the current world and the law thing, that's not going to happen yet, but maybe we'll get you on again. So from the point of view of archetypes and the current situation, like it blows my mind how easy this has been, how people are refusing to see, how they're willing to just give that authority away. They're waiting to see if they're allowed to have Christmas or they're allowed to go to a party or if they can
I
invite
know.
a friend. It's just, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
So from a point of view of archetypes, what the hell is going on?
Well, luckily, I answered this question to a great extent already. So the primal archetypes, and this was my big question at the beginning of the pandemic, like, what is happening here at the level of archetypes? What are they using against us? Because we already know, or you might know, marketers use archetypes. They're extremely aware. You got the Nike warrior and the do it
Right.
thou wilt kind of thing, and the Apple child that makes you buy a machine that doesn't work all the way yet. And it's just this like hopeful, wouldn't it be nice if kind of thing. And, so that's already there at the level of marketing. So I was looking to see the first very obvious archetype with the pandemic was the child. So all of a sudden everybody's standing on stickers and they're going like, how do I be safe? They're looking to see like,
Yeah.
who can keep me safe? And going into denial. Oh, it's Netflix time. And oh, it's just time to live in my pajamas all day long. And eat stuff and get fat and do nothing. Like it's just
Yeah.
right. And go into absolute denial, which is the big shadow of the child that is called to purpose. So it's a very confronting when that was weaponized against us. The majority of people went into the shadow of the child, got stuck there.
Okay.
And then as we talked about the victim, the prostitute, the saboteur, and the masculine feminine, which is it was not it has been more past. I've been waiting for them to do anything big around the masculine feminine because it's just so ripe for the picking. Maybe it's been done. Maybe it's the damage is done already. It's well underway, getting everybody to guess whether they're a man or a woman, or
Yeah,
to
I think
choose
so.
gender as a child and all that kind of stuff. So this is what I saw, that these archetypes are so leveled against us. For example, the prostitute, it's like wear the mask or you don't get to choose your food in the grocery store anymore. Oh, I'll wear the mask so that I can choose that thing. Right. And what's at the basis of it is survival. These are the primal archetypes, are all the precipice between life and death. That very fine line that we're working. The victim, it seems safe to be the victim. If I let them victimize me and put a poison injection in my arm and I get sick, then I've been the victim. I'm powerless. It had nothing to do with me and my decision. I have no personal authority. I don't have to have any responsibility. I don't have to think. I don't have to reason. I don't have to research. And I can just lay on my back and die at the hands of others and feel right in it and attract people's approval for that.
Right.
Right. If the virtue
Yeah.
signal, look at me, I'm suffering, it's awful. And then everybody, oh, poor thing. Right. The we talked about the prostitute, the saboteur, like the biggest one to me really of all, because it is the hiding of free will. There are people who don't even feel like they have that because
Mhm.
they're so automated in their life. Somebody tells them when to wake up in the morning, what to have for breakfast, when to go to work, or even to have breakfast. That's a psyop. Some breakfast is a psyop. You shouldn't have that. That we don't make any choices in our life. We're not called to choose. But in reality, life is this massive choice. Every single moment of your life, you must choose, and you will be responsible for the outcome of that choice. And so it's heavy, right? Again, I was talking to God about free will, and I'm actually crying, going, God, please send an intervention. This is getting too out of control. Like earlier in the days of the last, when things were getting heavy and we don't know what's going to happen, and I was getting caught up in fear, like, please God, please God. And then it's like, Beth, I hear this, Beth, you don't need, oh, I was praying for miracles. He's like, you don't need a miracle. You are the miracle. I gave it to you, the free will, all of it. You've got it. Like, just wake up, slapping my face, wake up, you got that shit, get off the floor, stop crying, exercise this power of free will. And that is where my course, Primal Power, was born, right? I'd been studying these archetypes for many, many years already, and just seeing like, where are people's power tied up? And especially not, I lost interest in waking anybody up. That's not the thing, because we have free will. You must wake yourself up. If you don't decide to wake up, you will never in a million years wake up. And so I decided to be of service at that point to the truth community who are willing to look at hard things. And so that's what Primal Power is specifically for, to help someone who already knows the truth, because really we don't know the truth, we know lies.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
very
We might
different.
not know everything, but we sure as hell know it's basically everything you've ever been taught. Look the opposite way for more, at least in the direction of truth, right? Like it's all a lie. Yeah.
Exactly. And even when you find a fact, that's not truth. Right. So this is to go deeper and find actual truth, where you start turning to yourself as the authority, where you think your way through situations. This is very big in law. You got all these babies around, and I've been a baby, maybe like I'm still in diapers. I don't know if how far along I actually am, but where you stop turning to someone looking for the right path. It's not like that. We all have to walk ourselves through the path. And so I won't go into super lot of detail, but if your audience isn't familiar with the Choose Freedom Law Summit, we have been hosting, we hosted 19 speakers of those that came forward in the past couple of years to offer their skills, that had knowledge in law, that know how to go around the demonic bar association and not work with lawyers, but to present yourself rather than be represented as a fiction. We've all, and this is part of the whole AI thing. We might have to talk again or something, because there's just so much here. And so to get to the bottom of it, but it is priceless to be able to hear these speakers and get their knowledge and start to choose like what resonates with you. What's the situation at hand that you have uniquely? How do you pull together, like the people that are being successful to me are the ones who can process and think for themselves and use their own actual intent. That's what we're meant to do. So it really ties back into that. I do see an Archetypes of Law course coming in the future. I've done one interview with Chance Garton about that. It hasn't all gelled. I haven't had the creative time, just because the Law Summit has been really consuming us in the last months now. But that is still free. I'm not sure when your podcast is going to go live.
It won't air. By the time this is
be.
aired, people, it's not free anymore. But
Yeah.
for a nominal donation, right, you can get so much information at your fingertips. So we'll have the link for that. So
Okay,
yeah, hopefully today I'll get it posted online, just on my page, but I won't, it won't be on this.
No problem. Yeah. So like you said, it's a nominal donation. And I write extensively about my story in my book journey, as you mentioned. So that's I've got amazing feedback. I managed to publish 5 minutes before the pandemic hit, which is really lucky, because otherwise I would have been super busy and maybe would have dropped it for a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so yeah, there is a number of ways to work with me, either in personal coaching or courses. I have the very last thing, if you don't mind, if I'll share, and then I need to go, is that I'm the whole pandemic. I can't stop saying that word. I cannot say pandemic even anymore. It inspired me to create a coaching certification program, because a lot of people were losing their jobs or didn't want to prostitute themselves anymore for a job. And this is something I intended to do, but I still didn't give myself permission to do it. And finally I said, okay, if those perpetrators can do this terrible thing to the world, I can do this good thing in the world.
100%.
Right. And so I created a 7-month program to teach the tools, how to read archetypes, how to coach people with archetypes, how to coach other people with the tools of deprogramming and releasing, how to walk someone through a transformation, because it's going to be more needed than ever. So not only is it a way to replace a profession that doesn't have your best interest anymore, but to help in your way, because we all came to help in some way. And this is not about being another Beth Martens. It's about getting the tools and all of those means for helping people transform in your way, to include, like I've got people doing, including astrology and permaculture and architecture and a whole variety of different ways of being in the world, law, that they are called to, but now they've got the tools and the skills to actually feel confident to have a coaching business or a mentorship service. Some people won't charge for the work. They just want to know more deeply how to help in a substantial way. And it's a very big way to transform yourself, because how I demonstrate everything is by coaching my students. I've run about 25 people through the program already, and the new program starts in September.
September. Okay, so you do them live.
I do them live. And I think it's timely enough to say that there's an early bird until the end of this month. So it's 40% off right now. It's a good time to look into it. And I will share the link with you if you don't mind to post that
please
as well.
do. Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, Beth. Well, thank you. Woo, that was a lot. And there's so much. I so appreciate your time. You're doing great things in the world. And I know more and more you're going to be popping up around for people, and people are going to get to know you. So I thank you. I'm going to get that law summit myself, and I need to get more work. We got into that work years ago and then dropped it. Now it's time to get back into it. So I really appreciate what you're doing in this world, and that you didn't die. So that's great.
There you go. Yeah, good idea. That worked out well.
Okay, Beth, thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Oh.